What is going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we are continuing my series on my NHL 2021-2022 season predictions. And for this video, we're going to be talking about some Nashville. That's right, the Nashville Predators. Ever since the 2018 season, the Nashville Predators have been on a pretty slow decline. And entering last year, I don't think there was a ton of expectations by fans that this team would do anything. However, the Predators did manage to have a pretty solid regular season and ended up making the playoffs. Looking at their stats here, they finished with a 31-23-2 record for a total of 64 points, which finished 4th in the Central Division. They got into playoffs at a pretty solid 94-point pace. But unfortunately, once they entered the postseason, they were just outmatched by a much better Carolina Hurricanes team, and they fell in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Taking a look at their stats offensively, they averaged a 2.7 goals for per game, which ranked 22nd in the NHL, and a 17.6% power play percentage, which was only tied for 23rd. Looking at these numbers, you can say that this Predators team was not all that great offensively, and scoring was definitely hard to come by, despite making the playoffs. Looking at their defensive stats, they averaged a 2.75 goals against per game, which ranked a solid 11th in the league. However, a 75.6% penalty kill percentage, which was 29th in the NHL. The offense was tough to come by, like I said. Their special teams was not good. It just felt like a team that was getting heavily carried by their starting goaltender, UC Saros, which is why you can see that their goals against was near the top 10 in the NHL. Taking a look at their top 5 scorers from last season, their leading scorer being Roman Josi with 48 games, 8 goals, 25 assists for 33 points for the defenseman and the captain. And we know that Roman Josi is a dynamic offensive defenseman, and he'll put up points in any given situation, but when he's your leading scorer, being a defenseman and all, that's a cause of concern for this Predators team. In second, we have Phillip Forsberg, who only played 39 games, but played really well. 12 goals, 20 assists for 32 points. Obviously, he was sorely missed in the lineup because without him providing a ton of offense, they really had no other options. Third, there was Calle Jarnkrok with 49 games. He had 13 goals, 15 assists for 28 points. Jarnkrok being a decent middle six forward for this team, but leading the team with 13 goals, your leading goal scorer with 13 goals, that's a trash offense, bro. Not gonna lie. Then fourth, we have Mikael Granlin, who in 51 games had 13 goals as well, with 14 assists for 27 points. Granlin's decent, but he's not the same player he was in Minnesota. His play has really fallen off ever since arriving in Nashville, and he's been pretty disappointing. I really expected more from this guy offensively, but he hasn't exactly provided that. Then in fifth, Victor Arvidsson had a very rough season in 50 games, 10 goals, 15 assists for just 25 points. Victor Arvidsson, we all know, is capable of scoring at least 25 goals a season, but last year it was definitely an off year for him, but they decided to trade him off, so we never know if he would bounce back with the Preds. Taking a look at their goaltending tandem from last season, obviously their starter being UC Saros, who had an amazing season carrying this Preds team. 36 games, a 21-11-1 record with a 2.28 goals against average and a 927 save percentage. We're going to call a spade. He's really the only reason why this team made the playoffs, and I'm shocked that he was not nominated for the Vezina Trophy. Not to say that the nominees were not more deserving, but UC Saros obviously had more of an impact on bringing this Preds team to the playoffs than any of those other goalies did on bringing their respective teams to the playoffs. And we have Pekka Rinne, who's now retired. Congrats on an amazing career, by the way. But in 24 games, a 10-12-1 record with a 2.84 goals against average and a 907 save percentage. Obviously, Rinne was not the goalie he once was, being much older, but I guess he did decent for his age. Looking at this team, there was a ton of holes, especially offensively, which is why I myself was pretty shocked to see them make the playoffs, and pretty comfortably as well. Now, entering this season for Nashville, I'm pretty sure expectations are going to take a dive here for most people. Taking a look at their offseason moves, this clearly looks like a team that's downgraded. By losing Victor Arvidsson, who's a top 6 scoring winger, Ryan Ellis, who was an amazing top pair defenseman for this team, and then of course they lost some depth in Calle Jarnkrok and Erik Haula. And in turn, they got a little bit younger, adding a solid young defenseman in Philip Myers, and an unproven center in Cody Glass, who really didn't get his feet under him in Vegas, and a backup goaltender in David Riddick, who I guess is serviceable, but he's really average at this point of his career. Clearly, this is a team that downgraded, and they got a lot younger. And for me, I'm getting this vibe that they might be heading into a rebuild, because this looks like a team that's transitioning, putting a ton of unproven young pieces on one team. We just don't know what's going to happen here. It does not look like the same competitive team that it has been in years past. Taking a look at the top 5 scorers that I have projected for next season. First, I have Phillip Forsberg scoring a very solid 28 goals and 37 assists for 65 points. So I have my concerns, obviously, about where else the offense is going to come from. Forsberg is probably the only consistent forward who I know for sure is going to be just fine. If healthy, he's a 25 goal scorer. He's proven that in the past. Maybe he gets traded. If this team is really rebuilding, he could be a guy on the move potentially. but if he's still on this team, he should still be the lone contributor offensively. Then at second, I got the captain Roman Josi scoring 13 goals and 45 assists for 58 points. Again, like I said before, he's a top tier offensive defenseman, and as long as he's playing, he will get his. Now, apart from those two guys, this is where the scoring kind of dries up a little bit. In third, I have Mikhail Grenlin scoring 21 goals and 24 assists for 45 points. Honestly, I don't think he's ever going to return to the Minnesota Wild Granlin, but as of right now, he's still a decent middle six option, and he probably should hover around 20 plus goals, 45-ish points. I think that's kind of fair. And in fourth, I got Eli Tolvanen scoring 23 goals and 19 assists for 42 points. Tolvanen's a pretty solid young forward, and I can definitely see him having a much better season in an improved role on a much younger Preds team now. He's a great young forward with a ton of upside and potential, so I definitely think he's capable of 20 plus goals and roughly 40 points. Perhaps he can hit more than that. And in fifth, I had to think about this a little bit, but ultimately I went with Ryan Johansson. 12 goals, 26 assists, 38 points, I guess. It was between him and Matt Duchene for fifth, but honestly, I just don't have the same confidence in them, so I had no idea what type of production they'll produce next season. As for Ryan Johansson, I feel like he's been on a fast decline lately, and maybe he produces more and proves me wrong, but honestly, over the last couple of years, he has not proven that he can still be a 50-plus point guy, and he doesn't score a ton of goals regardless, so I feel like this is fair, but obviously I could be underrating him. I could also be overrating him at the very same time. So my expectations for this team entering this season are obviously much lower. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last season, and unless UC Saros stands on his head yet again and carries this team on his own, this team is not going to be making the playoffs in my estimation. So with that, I have them finishing 7th in the Central Division with a 37, 39, and 6 record for a total of 80 points, and like I said, I don't think they're going to be making the playoffs this year. If this Preds team has any sort of playoff aspirations, then UC Saros is going to have a similar stellar year he had from last season to keep this Preds team relevant, because they can't score, their defense got weaker, especially by losing Ryan Ellis, and it's just not the same hockey club it was in years past, especially considering they're going to be returning to the normal Central Division that has a ton of competition and a ton of really solid teams. I just don't see playoffs in the Music City, unfortunately. So that's going to do it for my season preview and expectations on the Nashville Predators entering this season. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on where you think the Preds stand. Do you see the same as I do, as a team that's on the decline and probably not going to make the playoffs? Or do you see a team that has a ton of more potential to surprise people and actually be a lot more competitive and potentially make the playoffs in a tough Central Division? Again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Click like if you liked it. Please consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll talk to you in the next one. I'll see you guys later.